Lily and Ethan lived with their grandfather in a lovely village. Their little cottage sat on a hill, overlooking fields of sunflowers and their prized apple orchard. Every morning birdsong filled the air. The scent of Grandpa's baking wafted through the windows. Life was sweet and simple.
I love our apple tree the most. It stands tall and proud, bearing the juiciest apples you could ever taste.
He and Lily would spend hours playing under its shade, dreaming big dreams. Grandpa would tell them stories of his childhood, his kind eyes twinkling.
One sunny afternoon, dark clouds began to gather. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the orchard.
Grandpa, sensing a storm, called Ethan and Lily inside. They watched from the window as the sky turned an ominous gray. The storm hit suddenly, unleashing its fury upon the little village. Thunder roared, shaking the very foundations of their cottage. Lightning flashed, illuminating the frightened faces of the children. Ethan and Lily huddled together, their hearts pounding like drums. The storm raged on, the wind howling like a wild beast.
It's so scary, Ethan. I hope it ends soon.
When the storm finally subsided, a heavy silence fell. Ethan, Lily, and their grandfather cautiously stepped outside. The once beautiful orchard was a scene of devastation. Branches were strewn everywhere. Worst of all, their beloved apple tree lay on its side, uprooted by the wind.
Our tree, it's gone.
Ethan felt a pang of sadness, his eyes welling up. Ethan's sadness quickly turned to anger.
It's Mr. Grayson's fault. He chopped down his trees, leaving ours exposed to the wind.
Mr. Grayson had recently cleared some land on his side of the river, and Ethan was convinced this had caused their tree to fall.
But Ethan, the storm was so strong, maybe it wasn't anyone's fault.
But Ethan wouldn't listen. He stormed off towards Mr. Grayson's house, his anger burning like a wildfire. Grandpa placed a calming hand on Lily's shoulder.
Sometimes when we are hurting, it's easier to blame someone else than to face the pain. Let's give your brother some time to cool down.
Mr. Grayson, it's all your fault. Look at what you've done to our tree.
Ethan confronted Mr. Grayson, his words filled with anger and blame.
Ethan, I understand you're upset, but the storm was a force of nature. I'm truly sorry about your tree, but it wasn't my intention to cause any harm.
Mr. Grayson listened patiently, his face etched with concern.
Grandpa, don't you see? It's all his fault.
Ethan stormed back home, his anger still simmering. He found his grandfather sitting on the porch, gazing at the storm-ravaged orchard.
Ethan, holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot coal. It only burns you. Forgiveness, however, is like releasing a bird from its cage. It sets you free.
Grandpa looked at Ethan, his eyes filled with wisdom. Ethan sat in silence, his grandfather's words washing over him. He thought about the storm, about Mr. Grayson's words, and about the pain he was carrying. Slowly, he began to understand. The next morning, Ethan, with a heart full of forgiveness, approached Mr. Grayson.
Mr. Grayson, I'm sorry for my harsh words.
Mr. Grayson smiled and patted Ethan's shoulder.
It takes a strong person to forgive, Ethan. I'm proud of you.
Together, they joined the rest of the villagers, who were already working together to clean up the storm damage.
Ethan, I'm so proud of you.
Lily rushed to hug Ethan, her eyes shining with pride. As they worked side by side, Ethan realized that even in the face of adversity, there was always light to be found. He learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, but about letting go of anger and embracing compassion. And he knew, deep in his heart, that just like the sun always followed the storm, God always had a plan, even when things seemed their bleakest.